Fort Meade, Maryland, 1978. A man in military fatigues sits in a small, windowless room. He's been handed a sealed envelope. Inside it is a set of coordinates, nothing else. He's told to relax, breathe, and to let his mind drift toward whatever those numbers represent. Minutes pass. He begins to draw, first a coastline, then a long building, then, almost absently, a strange metallic dome. 2 weeks later, satellite photos confirm it. The coordinates lead to a Soviet submarine base in the Arctic, and that dome is very real. Somewhere in Langley, a CIA analyst stares at the sketch and mutters, "You've got to be kidding me." Welcome to Simply Suspicious, the podcast where history gets side-eyed and scandal gets the velvet rope treatment. Today we're wading into something that sounds like it was dreamed up at 2 a.m. after a UFO binge. This is the story of Project Stargate, the CIA's decades-long attempt to weaponize the human mind. Because apparently, during the Cold War, nothing said national security quite like trying to read a Soviet's thoughts through a wall. The year is 1947. The ink is barely dry on the Second World War, and already the United States and the Soviet Union are in a slow-motion staring contest that will last 50 years. Atomic secrets are being stolen, new nations are splitting in two, and America's intelligence community is entering what you might call its experimental art phase. By the late 1940s, the CIA, which was then the OSS, was running early mind control research. Enter Project Bluebird, later MK-Ultra, the infamous "let's see what LSD does to unsuspecting people" program. And while MK-Ultra was horrifying, it opened a weirder door. What if consciousness itself could be used as a spy tool? Meanwhile, across the Iron Curtain, Soviet scientists were publishing odd papers about telepathy and psychokinesis, biocommunication they called it. To American analysts, that sounded suspiciously like psychic espionage. So naturally, instead of ignoring it, the CIA panicked. If the Soviets had psychic spies, the U.S. needed psychic spies too, because the Cold War wasn't just an arms race, it was a brain race. Let's fast forward to the early 1970s. Stanford Research Institute in California, which was a think tank where physicists could experiment with things too odd for MIT. Here, we meet Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff, two laser physicists who were about to pivot hard into parapsychology. They connected with Ingo Swann, a self-proclaimed psychic who claimed he could see hidden objects through sheer mental projection. After a few demonstrations, including allegedly describing the rings of Jupiter before NASA confirmed them, the CIA was intrigued enough to sign some checks. Thus, Project Scanate, Scanning by Coordinate, was born. Under its umbrella, psychic viewers were given random coordinates or sealed targets, then asked to describe what they saw. The Army's Intelligence and Security Command soon got involved, turning the whole thing into a multi-agency project. By 1978, the project was officially renamed Project Grill Flame, sounds very Burger King, then Center Lane, and finally, Stargate. The government loves rebranding almost as much as failing upward. At its peak, Stargate involved more than 20 trained remote viewers, several civilian contractors, and enough paperwork to wallpaper Langley. This is where things get both fascinating and absurd. Pat Price, a former police officer turned psychic consultant, became one of the program's stars. In one session, he was handed coordinates later revealed to be a Soviet base in the Ural Mountains. Price described a large crane, spherical tanks, and a sense of underground construction. Declassified documents later showed, yes, there was a crane, and yes, there were tanks. Was it proof of psychic vision? Maybe. Or maybe the analyst cherry-picked the hits the way the government agencies do, selectively and with great enthusiasm. Still, some results were strange enough to keep funding rolling. During the late 1970s, Ingo Swann allegedly saw the surface of Jupiter, describing a band of crystals and a gaseous ring. Months later, NASA's Pioneer 10 flyby returned similar imagery. Coincidence? Maybe, but it was enough to make a few generals sweat. The Stargate sessions covered everything from hostage locations to lost aircraft, even attempts to locate Muammar Gaddafi's hidden bunkers. Viewers worked inside a secure room at Fort Meade, sitting at small desks, sketching what came to mind while monitored by officers who alternated between skepticism and existential dread. The language of their reports is wonderfully bureaucratic. Quote, viewer perceives metallic structure. Viewer perceives elevated platform. Viewer senses a goat. For 2 decades, the CIA actually paid people to sense goats. That's your tax dollars at work, folks. By the 1980s, STARGATE had survived multiple agency reviews. Every few years, a new director would wander in, look confused, and ask, wait, we're still doing this? One of the biggest boosters was Major General Albert Stubelbein, who famously tried to walk through walls to prove that mind over matter was real. Spoiler, it wasn't, but you have to admire the commitment. Still, not everyone was sold. The Defense Intelligence Agency, or the DIA, had to justify the expense, so they cherry-picked the most impressive hits for reports. If a psychic missed the target, the session was filed away quietly. In 1984, the CIA ordered a review by the National Research Council, which concluded the data was statistically significant but operationally useless. Translation: maybe something weird happens, but you can't plan a military mission around it. Even so, the Cold War paranoia was too strong. Funding kept trickling in, mostly because no one wanted to be the official who killed America's potential psychic advantage. By the late 80s, STARGATE had morphed into an odd hybrid, part research lab, part New Age cult with government clearance. Officers reported seeing auras, predicting natural disasters, and claiming to remote view Mars in 1 million BC. Somewhere, Carl Sagan probably sighed in cosmic disappointment. In 1995, after more than 20 years of secrecy, the CIA declassified STARGATE and commissioned the American Institutes for Research to evaluate the results. Their verdict: out of thousands of sessions, there was, quote, no actionable intelligence value, end quote. Translations: the psychic spies didn't actually spy. The project was quietly shut down. Some participants went public, publishing memoirs, appearing on talk shows, and doing the convention circuit. Meanwhile, the files hit the National Archives, thousands of pages of sketches, transcripts, and memoranda filled with phrases like, viewer perceives a sense of moisture. And while the CIA moved on, popular culture did not. The 2009 film The Men Who Stare at Goats was loosely based on these programs. Television shows like The X-Files and Stranger Things borrow their DNA from STARGATE's darker corners. And Dan Brown has a book called The Secret of Secrets, recently published, that is all about remote viewing. Today, remote viewing still has its believers. Civilian groups continue to hold sessions, claiming psychic espionage never truly ended, it just went private. Maybe it's comforting to think someone out there can still see across the world with their mind. Or maybe it's just proof that government projects, like ghosts, never really die. They just move to another budget line. If you liked this deep dive into psychic espionage, share it with your most skeptical friend, preferably one who won't make you sign an NDA. Until next time, remember, truth may be stranger than fiction, but bureaucracy is always stranger than both. Don't forget to follow us over on IG at simply_suspicious. Bye, y'all.